I'd like to create a report that counts the candidates that have applied to any specific requisition within a period of time. To do this, I'm going to start with the candidates by requisition topic. I'm then going to add a report name and some fields. I've chosen the following fields: candidates, ID, first name and last name, requisitions, title and location as well as ID, and the requisition candidate's date applied. I've also allowed for the filter to be the date applied within field. Note that I've added the ID for candidates and requisitions. That'll come in handy later to make sure that I'm talking about the right records, as I can filter them to be unique. Clicking Next takes me to a page that allows me to apply specific filters to the report. At this point I'm not going to do any. And clicking Next again will have a brief pause while the report editor loads up. Make sure that you don't click any buttons or leave the system while that's coming up. Okay, now that the entire report editor is here, let's have a look. You can see that there's title and page headers and so on. I'm not really going to play around with the headers, and I can assume that you can figure out how to put titling in yourself. But within this table section, it's allowing me to drop data, and I'm going to do that now. So first I'm going to drop the rec ID, the rec location, and the rec title. And because I've got a set fixed width, I'm going to rename the ID column just to ID so that I can drag it to be very small. I'm also going to resize the location and the title, and then I'm going to add my candidate ID, which I'll also rename and drag to be very small, and the candidate first name, last name, and the date applied. When I add the date applied, I'll note that it's got a timestamp in it. I don't love that, so I click on the column itself. Notice what's outlined here in yellow, and I change the formatting to be a date format that I find more preferable. Okay, so now I've got a list of the requisitions and all of the candidates that applied to the requisition, but I'm not really seeing any totaling. So what I want to do is I want to actually group all of the all the candidate records that are associated to a specific requisition. So I've taken the requisition ID column and I've said I'd like to introduce some grouping there. So it's showing all of the records that are associated with a specific requisition first. So our requisition ID is 2. And I've also like to include subtotals there so that I can count them. Now, because for requisition ID 2, it's in Pleasanton as a QA analyst, these rows are going to repeat for every record that it sees. So I'm actually just going to group those left as well, which will make just one show up. Okay, so now I'm showing Pleasanton QA analyst, but I see all of these IDs, and I see the subtotal that I've added when I said add subtotal is actually adding up all of the IDs. Well, that doesn't make sense. So let's just do a count distinct. Now that I've done a count distinct, I can see that 9 candidates have applied to this specific requisition. I can save my data and I can run this report. When I run a report, it's going to ask for the filter. I'm not going to choose one because I just have so little data in my sample. And the result is a report that shows the ID, the location, the requisition title, and the count of how many candidates have applied. But what if you wanted to see that data a little bit differently? What if you just wanted a table that listed off the recs and the number of candidates? Well, we can do that as well. I'll click Edit Layout, and back in the layout I'm going to want to add a section. So I've grabbed Layout Grid and drop it in, and it's asking me how many columns and how many rows I'd like to add a section. I just want one column of one row. There's my section. Now I'd like to insert a pivot table. So I'm just going to drop my pivot table in there. I would like to group things by location, and then rec title, and then just to make sure that they're unique, the rec ID. And I'm going to want to count candidates. So I'm dropping that into the column to show what it is that I want sorted. Now there we go. I see a subtitle again. Oops, I want a subtitle actually on the rec ID. So I will just highlight the candidate's ID that's coming up and say count distinct. Now let's save and run our report. Here we see our report results. So in Krakow there's a QA analyst with rec ID 3 that has 3 candidates. Let's scroll down and see if that matches up. Rec ID 3 in Krakow QA analyst, 3 candidates. 2 different ways to look at your data right within one report. I hope that this small instructional video helps you understand how to use Taleo Business Edition reporting.